You think Donald Trump is bad? Well, his pick for vice president is even worse. Mind you, the senator from Ohio is the same guy behind a false rumor about Haitian. Even though the entire sack of lie was debunked, he's still spreading them. Trump picked him for one reason, because his name is short, Vence. Remember, Trump last VP, Mike Pence? Well, this time it's Vence. I'm talking about the same Mike Pence Trump tried to have killed on January 6th. Vence almost got fired right after the GOP convention. Why? When the MAGA cult was introduced to his wife for the first time, they were shocked to find out she's Indian American. She gave a speech about how much Vence loved Indian food and how good he is at cooking it. After that, the Trump campaign had a meeting to come up with a strategy to fix this so-called problem.
AF, you know who's not happy about JD Vance being selected? MAGA Republicans who woke up and realized that JD Vance's wife, Usha, happens to be Indian American, and her parents are Indian immigrants. And their children, 3 of them, at least 2 of them, have classic Indian names like Vivek and Ewan. And there's pictures of the family Vance that are being circulated by MAGA, criticizing them and sometimes putting them up against what people claim to be Democratic families of blonde, blue-eyed white people. And even Nick Fuentes, who, by the way, has a connection to Donald Trump, is an alt-right white supremacist who has a podcast. Even he questioned out loud about whether and how they should accept JD Vance and how they can trust him on immigration when he has a family that looks like that. I am not making this up. Here's what Nick Fuentes, supporter of the Proud Boys, supporter of all of the marches in Charlottesville, this is what he just said.
JD Vance also has a non-white wife, an Indian wife, and a kid named Vivek. All his kids have Indian names. So it's like, what exactly are we getting here? And that's not a dig at him just because I'm a racist or something. But it's like, who is this guy really? Do we really expect that the guy who has an Indian wife and named their kid Vivek is going to support white identity? Like, there's a white genocide going on in the world. White people are being systematically replaced in America and Europe through immigration and to a much lesser extent due to intermarrying. This guy has a non-white wife and a kid named Vivek. This guy is going to be a defender of white identity? I don't think so. This guy's going to defend American identity? If he does, it's going to be no better than any of these other civic nationalists like Vivek Ramaswamy. How else could you countenance American identity if you have a mixed up family like that?
And then he goes on to say, I am not making this up, folks. He goes on to say, hey, what gives with all the race mixing and brown baby names where my real Caucasian family's at? That's from Nick Fuentes' podcast. He's a MAGA. He's a supporter of Donald Trump. And Usha, who clerked for John Roberts, Supreme Court Justice, she's a lawyer, who also clerked for Brett Kavanaugh before he became a United States Supreme Court Justice, who purportedly was Democrat, is a practicing Hindu, and apparently the family is too, took to the stage at the RNC convention, a stage where they were chanting just moments before and around her about mass deportations and locking up immigrants. And yet she took the stage glowing about her husband, JD Vance, who at his prior life as an author, making the author's circuit, said that Donald Trump was America's Hitler, that he is a needle in the arm of America. That's not a thumbs up for what he's saying. I'm just reporting it. That Donald Trump, this is JD Vance now, is a needle in the arm of America, right? That he's a drug that should be rejected, that he's an idiot, and that he's going to lead the country to ruin. That JD Vance. And now MAGA's waking up and they're saying, who is this JD Vance guy? And why does he have a brown wife? I mean, I'm giving you like my artist rendering of their opinions. I mean, there's enough social media out there that indicates that they were as surprised as anybody by the selection. I mean, for instance, let me just for a moment, just to sort of round this out as MAGA loses its mind over Usha. Let's just go through it here, just so you understand what I'm talking about. Or the headline that I liked from one of the news outlets was racist maggots find out Trump's VP pick JD Vance has an Indian wife and family, and they're not okay with it, as if they have a choice. One Trump supporter posted a picture of JD, a beardless JD with his wife holding one of their children a number of years ago, and just said, I'm sure this guy is going to be great on immigration. Another one posted Trump VP nominee JD Vance and his Indian wife, she's Indian American, by the way, have 3 children named Uwan, Vivek, and Mirabelle. He's not one of us. Another posted a photo of a large, white, blonde, blue-eyed family next to a picture of JD Vance, his wife Usha, and 2 of their children, and said, what went wrong? Another posted just a picture of them when a beardless JD Vance, a number of years ago, with his wife, saying just this following. JD Vance's wife is Indian, by the way. Another one named Adolf Hipster said the problem isn't that his wife is Indian, but that she's not a Christian, and his children all have Indian Hindu names. By the way, I'm not sure Mirabelle is an Indian Hindu name, but let's leave it at that. She spoke tonight. This is him. This is this guy commenting about her speech, the same speech at the convention where people are chanting for mass deportation of people like her parents. She spoke tonight about how Vance gave up his traditional American diet. Oh, here we go. We're getting very close to Dr. Strangelove territory now. The traditional American diet. To adopt veganism with her and learn how to cook Indian vegan food for her family. This makes Vance an emasculated cuck, C-U-C-K, inside his own household and family. And it gets worse, not better. So I am sure in Donald Trump's addled mind, when he rejected Nikki Haley, an Indian American governor from South Carolina, who ended up getting on the stage as well during mass deportation chants, which should have sent a chill down her spine, being a first-generation or second-generation child of immigrants, who, of course, said she's never suffered racism in her entire life as a brown child in South Carolina, of all things. I'm sure Donald Trump's checklist was, well, I'm not going to get Nikki Haley, but I got the next best thing because I've got a brown wife of my vice president candidate, or words to that effect. But that'll backfire because the Republican tent and the GOP tent is really not, that's a thumbs up, is really not broad to include lots of different people and diversity. This is an organization. This is a cult that is against diversity and inclusion, who uses diversity and inclusion as a weapon whenever there's a failing of some sort or a tragedy, like a bridge collapses or what happened in Pennsylvania. It's the fault of black mayors or women Secret Service agents. This is what they say out loud. So it's not a big tent of unity, right? Because you picked a token 39-year-old white guy who's really a Silicon Valley venture capitalist to try to appeal to white working poor in the Rust Belt because he wrote a semi-fictional novel memoir about his childhood. And it doesn't make you a large tent just because he happens to have married the love of his life, who's an Indian American woman, and she gets up on stage to tout her husband, which I would expect. Not faulting her for that. I mean, she had to have looked around in chilling display of of just raw power, and animus, and discrimination and bigotry on display during the RNC, chance of mass deportation and lock up immigrants, and then couple that with MAGA, true MAGA, who now have realized that there's maybe a brown second lady who's going to be elected, who's going to go into office if Trump were to be elected. Tells you everything you need to know about the party. I mean, Nick Fuentes is not an outlier. He's not a rogue. Marjorie Taylor Greene is not an outlier. They represent the beating heart and soul. No, there's no soul. The beating heart of this party. There's no other way to put it. The sell-by date for the Republican Party, it's done. Put it on the tombstone. That party died in 2016, and it has never recovered. And should anybody find it surprising that they are now cannibalizing and knives are out and they're going after Usha Vance because they just woke up and realized that she's not a person. She's not a accomplished woman. She's not a lawyer and litigator in her own right. She's not a former Supreme Court clerk. She's a brown wife. This shows you the rampant stream and strain of misogynistic conduct and approach and racism in the Republican Party. They're not celebrating the Indian American wife of their vice presidential candidate. They're pillaring her. They're attacking her and him and calling him a shapeshifter, which they're right about. They're calling him a chameleon of the worst kind. They don't know who he is. Who is JD Vance? Is he the Manchurian candidate? Right? And this is the person that they think could be president of the United States if something were to happen to the guy at the top of the ticket. That was the first judgment that Donald Trump made on the heels of already been the subject of an attack in Pennsylvania, was to pick a 39-year-old Silicon Valley hedge fund guy who never accomplished anything in his life and wrote a book, who served in the Senate for about 8 months and almost didn't get out of his primary until he genuflected and butt kissed Donald Trump. That's how he got out of that primary and won the Senate seat, and hasn't accomplished a darn thing in the Senate. Name me one bill that he's been able to sponsor. Name me one law that's been passed. Name me one thing that he's done in all of his time in the short amount of time in the Senate. Nothing. What, he ran a charity, back in Ohio for poor children based on hillbilly elegy. That's it. That qualifies you to be the leader, one heartbeat away to be the leader of the free world, to occupy the Oval Office, to be the commander in chief. I mean, I had thought that after what happened in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump would reverse, because I had heard about JD Vance. And when I saw JD Vance's tweet within seconds of what happened in Pennsylvania, blaming Biden and President Biden's rhetoric, talk about projection, talk about gaslighting for what happened in Pennsylvania, I said, oh, this guy is definitely getting picked. Either he knew he was about to get picked and did that, or that was the last thing Donald Trump needed. The last bootlick he needed to pick JD Vance. But I thought Donald Trump would say, well, maybe I need to pick somebody more mature, somebody more qualified, at least ran a state. Maybe, the guy from North Dakota, maybe Marco Rubio, somebody else that's at least been in the government, in the public eye, and has done something. Nope. No, just looking for the person who's the most malleable, the most impressionable, the most willing to do whatever Donald Trump says, jump how high, insurrection, tell me where, and JD Vance has been, talk about flip-flop, talk about just spinning in the wind like a weather vane. He doesn't know whether he's coming or going. And now he has to wake up to real America and real MAGA America that don't accept his wife or his Indian Hindu lifestyle or his children. That's the America. He should worry less about protecting the rights of white people, which seems to be his entire campaign reason for existing. And he should care more about families that look like his and wives and husbands that look like his and how they're treated in a Republican administration, in a MAGA America. That should be his concern. But of course it's not. And now they have to see the ugly, I was going to say the ugly side of MAGA, but it's just the side, that'd be redundant, the side of MAGA that we all know and experience, but now directed towards his wife, Usha.
Decided Vence needed to keep his wife off the campaign trail. Vence even had to use a lot of perfume to kill the curry smell in the house. And then the Haitian eating pet story seemed like a good idea at the time. Why? Because MAGA, white nationalists, hit black people, and Haitians are black, in a small town. Who would even check to see if it was true? But this one lie will be the end of Trump and Vence. Later, Trump will throw Vence under the bus, just like he did with Pence. Okay? He will put him under the bus. He's going to tell everybody, I love Haitian people. I would never say that. It was the idea of my vice president. And just like he did before with little Kim of North Korea, because that's how Trump is. And anybody who follow Trump, to people like Elon Musk, they're going to be, you remember the My Pillow guy? Elon Musk is going to be just like him. Remember Giuliani? I could give you a whole list. People that are very successful in what they do, plus a bunch of lawyers that worked with Trump in the past, and they all end up losing their law license, and people, you know, because the guy is a criminal. And imagine, listen, I'm not making this up, but you imagine Trump can, with his criminal record right now, he's a convicted felon. He couldn't drive a school bus. He couldn't drive an Uber. He couldn't work in the school cafeteria as a janitor. But people want to put him in the White House for president. And why? It's simple. The big, rich businesses want to put him in there because they know all he's going to be doing is not going to be running the government. They're going to put their own people in there. So they could give themselves a big tax break like they did before, who created the deficit that they're blaming Biden for, and then deregulation. Deregulation, an example of that is that even if you was a homeless guy and you want to buy a house, they'll give you a mortgage, and then they'll put an insurance on it. So when you can't pay, they'll take their house back, and then the insurance would give them their money, and this is what they were doing. And that's why we had the prime problem in the past during the Bush administration. And it's not because they love Trump. They know, they figured that they're going to put their own people in there to run the country. But they tried that before, and Trump fired all of them. When Trump came to power last time, he had all these generals, he fired all of them. That's what you call the military-industrial complex. They were in there, they got fired. He had people from all the big firms, the big banks, and his staff around him. He fired them because he was going to do what he wanted to do. He's a loser. He cannot win. And if you try to make him a winner, it's not going to happen because he wasn't born for that. Okay? His father tried that. That's why they sent him to a reform school. And the reform school couldn't do anything. Okay? You ever see anybody tell you they went to school with Trump and he was the head of the class or he was the last? That's a secret. But his niece just come out with a book. I think everybody should read it. The way he was bullying the people in the neighborhood, the other kids, and everything else. Because his family, his own brother come out and say that he went to him for his nephew is against him. His niece is against him. His sister, who was a judge, you know what she said? She said that he's such a liar. The only reason he went to college is because he paid somebody to take the college entrance test for him.
is reacting today to his own sister trashing him in recordings secretly made by their niece.
He has no principles. None. Can't trust him.
Marianne Trump Berry, a retired federal judge, shreds her kid brother, the president.
Damn tweet and the lie. Oh my God, I'm talking too freely, but you know, it's the change of stories, the lack of preparation, the lying, holy.
The recordings were made by Mary Trump, who just published the scathing book, Too Much and Never Enough, How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man. She said she recorded 15 hours of conversations with the president's older sister in 2018 and 2019. Marianne had no idea she was being taped.
Donald's out for Donald, period.
And now we know Marianne was the source of the stunning claim in Mary Trump's book that the president cheated his way into college by having a friend take the SATs for him.
He got into University of Pennsylvania. I guess he had somebody take the exams. No way. He had somebody take his entrance exams? SATs or whatever. Yeah, that's what I believe. Oh, man. Oh, that's insane.
The president doesn't seem too bothered by the tapes, sounding upbeat as he was renominated at the Republican National Convention in North Carolina.
I love this state. I like this place.
He brushed off his sister's recordings with this tweet: "Every day, it's something else. Who cares?" White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows is also dismissing the tapes.
I mean, what family member tapes another family member for 15 hours secretly?
There's been no reaction yet from Marianne, who was a no-show Friday at her brother Robert's funeral at the White House, attended by many Trump family members. Trump biographer Gwenda Blair says she's not surprised at Marianne's harsh appraisal of her brother.
The recording reminded me very closely of the interview I did with Marianne Trump. She was very direct, she was very candid, and she was not, I would say, a huge fan.
He has no principles. None.
Okay, Donald, if you're listening, if you're watching, I got your number. I have your number. Word up. Thank you very much.